There are 8 billion humans alive today. Neon lights flicker from towers that pierce the clouds. We send machines beyond the edge of the solar system, share thoughts at the speed of light, and teach satellites to recognize our faces from space. Cities breathe with the pulse of electricity, and entire nations hum in unison like a living circuit board. But rewind time 300,000 years, and the Earth tells a different story. No highways, no phones, no cities, just wind, fire, blood, and breath. The entire human species, all of them together, could fit inside a modern football stadium. Fewer than 10,000 Homo sapiens hiding beneath the sky, scattered across a vast and unforgiving land, standing on the edge of extinction. They had no guarantee of survival. In fact, 99% of all species that have ever lived are now gone. And this ghost of a species, these quiet ancestors clinging to life in a scorched corner of the African continent, would shape everything. If you're using these to fall asleep, that's literally why I make them. So, subscribe maybe, and tell me where you are and what time. I check comments, and it's always Toronto at breakfast, Nairobi at bedtime, Kyoto somewhere in between, all at once. The same story reaching everywhere. Africa. A continent, not just of deserts and savannas, but of ancient secrets hidden in stone and bone. For millions of years, it was the untouched stage of natural selection's longest play. Volcanic heat rose from the Great Rift Valley, like breath from the Earth's core, while tectonic forces tore land apart, creating rifts where fate would pivot. From lush tropical forests to parched salt flats, this land was a crucible of extremes. And while the rest of the planet swayed under ice ages, floods, and continental shifts, Africa stayed the course. Stable enough to breed life, unstable enough to forge resilience. Here, the climate didn't coddle. It challenged. It shifted rainfall patterns, collapsed food chains, and tested every living thing. This was not the perfect place for humans to evolve. It was the only place that forced them to. Beneath the long afternoon sun of an African Miocene, before humans even had names, a different world stirred. Apes with primitive minds swung through trees along what is now Ethiopia, gripping ancient branches that would one day echo with the cries of language. Somewhere between 10 million and 5 million years ago, something began to shift. The forests started to thin. The world began to dry. Thick canopies of green collapsed into open grasslands, and for the creatures who once clung to trees, the rules changed. The horizon now mattered more than the canopy. Survival demanded eyes that looked forward, not up, limbs that walked, not climbed. And in the shadow of this ecological upheaval, a fracture formed. A tiny offshoot of primate kind began to adapt, not stronger, not faster, but different. They stood, they walked, they remembered. In a world that gave no second chances, walking upright meant seeing danger sooner, traveling farther, freeing hands for tools. These were not yet humans, but they were becoming. And this place, this band of shifting ecosystems carved by fire and rain, was their proving ground. Evolution sharpened its blade in Africa, and it cut deep. 2 million years passed like breath on glass. The line between ape and human blurred, sharpened, broke, and reshaped again. Alongside predator and drought, in a cradle of fire and famine, new silhouettes emerged across the plains. Homo habilis chipped flint beside rivers that no longer exist, unlocking the first whispers of ingenuity. Homo erectus lit sparks in caves to hold off the screaming dark, migrating farther and wider, with a footprint that caught the wind. But in the rustle of grasses between the valleys of East Africa, something stranger took hold. A brain that swelled behind the brow, chasing pattern, memory, and meaning. Hands that carved purpose into stone, eyes that wept for the dead. These were not instinctual flashes. They were the early rituals of becoming human. And while cousins rose across the continents, Denisovans in the east, Neanderthals in the snowbound west, it was here, in the unstable heart of Africa, that a singular line held the thread. Not by strength, but by adaptability, because here, the climate didn't wait. Rivers vanished for centuries, and then returned with fury. Animals migrated, then disappeared forever. Each generation faced a world that was familiar and yet entirely reborn. Only the ones who could learn faster, who could imagine further, endured. So, the mind grew hungrier than the body, and in that hunger, evolution made a wager. It placed a fragile creature against the weight of time, armed not with armor, but imagination. Then came the bottleneck. 74,000 years ago, the sky darkened. Mount Toba erupted in what remains one of the most violent supervolcanic events in Earth's history, releasing more than 1,000 times the explosive power of any nuclear detonation. Ash blanketed the Sunday, temperatures plummeted, photosynthesis faltered, food chains disintegrated. Across the globe, life reeled. Somewhere between Indonesia and India, entire ecosystems collapsed into grey silence. But in Africa, in small, scattered, isolated pockets, a fragile few persisted. Genetic evidence suggests that perhaps fewer than 2,000 Homo sapiens survived, not in cities, not in shelters, but in coastal caves and hidden highlands, foraging seaweed, grubs, and shellfish, watching the world forget the sky. Every sunrise beyond that winter of ash became a roll of fate's dice. And yet somehow, the line held. Whispers of fire, pigment on stone, tools fashioned with obsessive care, these clues tell us they didn't just endure. They began to think differently, to see patterns in chaos, to share meaning. It wasn't just survival, it was strategy, memory, culture. And within that crucible of near death, the fragility of the human line became its strength. Because a species staring into extinction dreams harder than one that's secure. And, under the shadow of a world-ending sky, humanity began its reckoning with the infinite. By the time those clouds of volcanic ash cleared, the survivors had become something else entirely. Not just creatures of flesh and fire, but of memory sharpened into myth. These scattered bands across Africa, along the cliffs of South Africa's Pinnacle Point, the obsidian shores of Lake Turkana, the red rock shelters of Tanzania, left the first undeniable footprints of something immortal. Symbols etched into stone, beads carved from ostrich shells, hearths arranged with purpose, not chance. As if, even in isolation, they knew that the only way to outrun oblivion was to tell a story to the future. Not just through bloodlines, but through language, through culture, through ritual. And though countless tribes would rise and fall after them, languages blink in and out like stars, and empires turn to dust, something from those first survivors lived on. A mindset, a way of seeing, a core adaptation, forged in Africa, to survive not only disaster, but change itself. Because more than strength, more than fire or tools, it was this resilience through reinvention that made Homo sapiens unstoppable. Not gods, just survivors, refined through ruin, whispering across each generation the lessons learned in shadow. And it all began with a land that never settled, and a people who couldn't afford to either. But why didn't this story unfold in Europe, or Asia, or the vast untouched Americas? Why did evolution anchor its most pivotal gamble here, in Africa, and nowhere else? The answer, like a fossil hidden beneath the weight of epochs, lies in the unpredictable brutality of the continent itself. Africa never gave favors. Its tectonic heartbeats, its relentless droughts, its roving predators, These formed an unrelenting boot camp of survival that no other region matched. Where Eurasia froze in long glacial hibernations, Africa oscillated between flood and famine with chaotic rhythm. It forced the mind to become agile, the social bond to become sacred. In regions of relative climatic ease, other hominins flourished for a time, but they did not adapt fast enough to endure. Their strength became their rigidity. But in Africa, adaptability wasn't a trait, it was a law. Generations who couldn't change vanished. Those who could innovated. Africa didn't give birth to us because it was paradise. It birthed us because it wasn't. Even today, deep in our neural architecture, the echoes of that ancient land still linger. The reflex for fight or flight, the hunger for story, the need to belong to a tribe, all inherited from survivors who stared into darkness and made meaning of it. Every skyscraper climbed, every spacecraft launched, every poem whispered into a quiet night, all traces of a lineage, carved through scarcity and sharpened by adaptation. We carry within us the spiritual residue of salt winds over African cliffs, of ash-darkened skies, of the hush between predator and prey. We weren't chosen, we were forged, not by mercy, but by challenge, bound not by borders, but by the same forgotten fire that first warmed a cave. That story, the one that began under African stars, isn't finished. It's spoken now in every language, in every time zone, in every breath. And somewhere between sunrise in Cape Town and midnight in Sao Paulo, someone's dreaming it right now. Same sky, same species, same spark. So next time a storm rages, or the earth groans beneath your feet, remember, the origin of humanity is not a peaceful prelude, but a survival, epic etched into bone and memory. It didn't unfold in quiet gardens or gentle climates. It roared into existence from droughts that cracked the earth open, from volcanic winters that nearly erased us, from evolution's gamble played at the highest stakes. We are not separate from that chaos. We are its children, the ones who saw the world fall apart and kept walking, the ones who turned suffering into strategy and fear into firelight. This isn't just ancient history. It's the echo in your heartbeat. The reason every civilization rises with a story, and every child learns by asking why. Africa didn't just give us roots, it gave us resilience, imagination, and the instinct to pass it on. So when you close your eyes tonight, and the silence hums around you, know that the darkness isn't empty. It's full of ancestors carried in your blood, still whispering, adapt, endure, remember. And maybe that's the final answer. Not in DNA or fossil lines, not buried in rock or ancient ash, but in the light that never quite went out. A flicker passed between generations, unsure but persistent, carved through droughts, migrations, and endless unmaking. Africa was not the chosen land. It was the trial, the forge, the place where sightless ancestors watched lightning split the night and imagined gods, where emptiness forced invention and silence birthed language. And tonight, as sleep pulls you backward through time, with breath slowing and thought sinking, that buried ember warms the dark again. Not for science, not even for history, but for something quieter, something older. That need to know where we came from and why it mattered. Because every heartbeat carries the rhythm of that first drum. Every dream retraces the route out of Africa. Every quiet moment, as this one, remembers a flickering fire under stars we never stopped chasing. And perhaps, just perhaps, that is how the story survives. So the next time someone asks why humanity began in Africa, do not point only to bones or maps. Point instead to the silence between thunderclaps, to the rhythm of rain on dry savannas, to wind that carved minds as much as mountains. Tell them it's not just geography, but the gauntlet. The story never belonged to one place, but its beginning demanded the kind of trial only Africa could offer. A continent that challenged every generation to wake up not asking what they needed, but who they had to become. And in becoming, they left a signal fire burning, still crackling in each restless imagination, still whispering in each night's descent. We are the descendants of scarcity-born dreamers, of fire tenders and storm runners. And our greatest inheritance is not just survival but the stories we refuse to let die with us. Sleep now, and let them carry you. Sleep now, with the ghost light of ancient hearths flickering behind your eyelids. Let the dust of time settle gently in your lungs. Let the breath of savanna winds carry you backward, farther than memory, beyond names, past firelight and stone. Somewhere in that dream space, where continents drift slowly like thought and constellations reshape themselves across black skies, there lingers the shadow of our beginning, a time when thought was survival and fire was faith, when every night could have been the last and every morning was a miracle. That spark, born in the crucible of Africa, is still alive in the stillness, in the quiet surrender of sleep, not an end but a return, a remembering. So let the darkness take you, gently now, like river silt folding over fossil bone. Let the pulse of ancestral footsteps echo in the deepening silence, and with each breath, descend further into the soil of story. You sleep not in a world apart from theirs, but in the same dream they once dreamt of safety, of kin, of a soft place to close their eyes. In every cave where warmth once flickered, in every whisper carried by wind across an ancient savanna, they are still there, waiting, watching, guiding. And as night deepens and the veil thins, know this: the human story did not begin with conquest or control, but with breath and a body and the will to keep going. In Africa's restless cradle, endurance became memory, and memory became myth, and myth became this lullaby, passed from voice to voice until it reached you, here, in the hush between now and sleep. And when light returns, as it always has, slow and golden beyond the horizon, that story does not end. It waits, carried forward in the gaze of a curious child, in the trembling hands of someone tracing stars, in the quiet certainty of a people who know without knowing why. It waits in the rhythm of footsteps on morning streets, in fire escapes and open notebooks, in lullabies sung without origin. Africa was the crucible, yes, but the story, our human story, is what we did with that fire. We didn't survive it by fleeing. We survived it by becoming, by changing, by believing the world could be different if only we risked stepping into the unknown. And that belief, older than language, wild as wind, is why the sun still rises on us, still rises on you. Sleep now, traveler of time. Tomorrow the story continues because you are the story now, and dreaming is how it remembers you. So rest now, with that flame nestled quietly in your chest, the one lit before names and calendars, burning through unbroken lineage. Let it glow in the space between thought and sleep, where ancestors murmur in the wind and old worlds drift through the veil. You do not dream alone. Across oceans and languages, across deserts and neon skies, others lie in silence, too cradled by the same ancient rhythm. This world we've built, with its towers and timelines, its borders and stars, is just another way of remembering where we came from. And in this stillness, you too are remembering, not just as mind or body, but as continuum, as story, as spark. And that, more than any discovery or invention, is the proof, the evidence, that we came from fire and we carry it forward. Sleep well, keeper of the ember. The long night remembers you. And as the ember flickers within, guarded by breath and blood and memory, the earth beneath us does not forget. Every step we take rests upon layers of ash and bone, fossil echoes of those who dared to begin. The winds still speak their language if one listens. The rivers still reflect their sky. Humanity, for all its machines and myths, began as a question posed by a landscape that never gave easy answers. That question still hums in us now, quieter but constant. Who do we become when all else is stripped away? Africa asked it first. And its answer, whispered in stories, printed in DNA, etched into shadowed cave walls, rises each time we close our eyes. So let them close fully now. Let the story hold, soft and steady. You are a chapter in a tale older than time, carried gently between worlds, where fire meets dream and silence sings. Rest in that echo, and carry it forward when you wake. And in the echo of that ancient fire, a deeper truth glows, faint yet fervent, that we were never meant to rule this world, but to respond to it, to its storms, its silences, its shifting shapes, to listen, to change, to endure. The earth was never conquered. It was conversed with, in footprints and flame, in lullabies hummed beneath strange stars. That conversation began in Africa, forged not in power, but vulnerability. We were shaped not by certainty, but by the refusal to give in. Each dawn since has been a nod to that defiance. Each slumber, a return to it. So let sleep fold around you now, like the soft hide of a shared shelter, warming you as it once warmed them. Tomorrow waits with its questions, but tonight let the answer be simple. You are here, barefoot on the lineage of survival, carried forward by every soul who dared to dream beyond the firelight. That is not just history, it is prophecy. Rest in it. And if in this twilight between waking and dream, you feel the world slip just beyond reach, that is where the ancestors waited, not as ghosts, but as possibility. For somewhere in the rust of grass and the dust of bone, the first question was asked not with words, but with a glance toward the stars. What is beyond? What if tomorrow comes? That question is still asked tonight, by hearts that beat beneath electric skies, by dreamers tangled under blankets, by voices softened into lullabies. Africa didn't answer that question. It invited us to keep asking, to walk toward uncertainty with open eyes and blistered feet, to believe always that the path forward exists, even when it can't be seen. That is the inheritance, not just of fire, or memory, or name, but of wonder, glowing faintly in the dark. Sleep now, not in forgetfulness, but in remembering. What began under stars will return to them, and you, quiet as breath, are still part of that becoming. So close your eyes now, and let that wonder carry you. Let it drift like a slow river over the bedrock of ancient time, where roots wind among forgotten skulls, and rainfall echoes in stone hollows. Let yourself fall, not away from the world, but into it, into the deep rhythm that began before language, before even thought. Because the human story is not just behind us, written in dust and fire. It is all around, in breath, in stillness, in the hush that blankets night. Africa was the seed, yes, but we are the bloom reaching skyward. From the first step across savanna soil to the final sigh of sleep, we carry one truth. Despite the odds, we are here. And that, in the end, is the most beautiful story ever told. Sleep gently now. You are its next line. Sleep gently now, with the story still glowing inside you. Let it pulse like the heartbeat beneath stone, quiet but steady, old but unbroken. The earth holds your dreams tonight, as it once held the dreams of those who first dared to hope. And though the names are lost to wind, and their faces long returned to dust, the rhythm they began continues in you, in all of us, in each breath drawn beneath the stars. This isn't just a history of beginnings. It's a map of resilience, buried in ash and memory, blood and thought. and where it leads next is still being written, one dream at a time. So sleep now, cradle of firelight. Africa remembers you. The embers are safe in your keeping. Story sleeps, but it never ends. And neither do you. Now, as the night stretches endless and slow, and dreams slip deeper into that velvet terrain where time bends and meanings blur, remember this isn't just a tale from long ago. It is your inheritance, a silent thread linking you to forgotten gods of stone and mothers who hummed lullabies beside the first coals. When the stars above fade behind the lids of sleep, their arrangement still maps the first migrations, their light still burns with the same ancient fire. You rest now, at the edge of the same world they once feared and followed, wrapped not in pelts, but in stories layered over centuries. In this final quiet, may you carry what they carried, not only the will to survive, but the faith that tomorrow is worth the journey. Close your eyes. The fire burns low but steady. The cradle holds. And the story walks forward, because it walks with you. Sleep now. You are not alone. And as the fire lowers to cinders and silence deepens, let one final truth settle around you like morning mist. We survived not because we mastered nature, but because we harmonized with its chaos. The rhythm of flood and famine, of thunder and eclipse, was not just endured. It was understood, felt in the marrow, sung into story, and passed like sacred flame. We are not the end of that lineage. We are the continuation, still shaping meaning out of shadow, still listening for echoes in the wind. So sleep now, not as an ending, but as a return to that hum beneath it all, to the pulse that began in Africa and beat toward destiny with every barefoot step across the unknown. May that rhythm cradle you tonight. May it speak in dreams. And when you wake, open your eyes, knowing the story did not fade when the fire dimmed. It simply waited for you. And if, in some dream or quiet moment to come, you find yourself wondering how it all began, how minds awoke in the dark, how fire danced in blisters and eyes, how a continent sculpted thought from hunger, just remember, it was never proof we needed. It was meaning. And Africa gave us that too, not in perfection, but in persistence. Not in triumph, but in transformation. What began there was more than a species. It was a symphony of survival, reverberating still in hearts that hesitate before the unknown, in hands reaching for something brighter, in voices trembling with the need to belong. We are not the conclusion. We are the song still being sung, with every breath fleeing into the night, every question dared in the dark. If tonight you sleep deeply, know it is because someone once stayed awake by a fading ember, breathing your name through time. And in the hush between realities, where past and dream converge, that ember is still glowing, still remembering, still becoming. There, in the heart of that glowing ember, history becomes prayer, not of gods or certainty, but of lineage and offering of survival sung in silence. Africa did not give us answers, it gave us endurance, and from that we shaped answers for ourselves. We wept and built and wandered. We fought shadows and each other. But always, we remembered. Even if we forgot the details, we remembered the rhythm, the weight of it, the feeling of story passed hand to hand across generations like fire cupped against the wind. So as your eyes close and the world fades soft and strange at the edges, know this: the path does not vanish behind you. It stretches forward, lit by thousands of flickers from every soul who ever asked why. Sleep now in that glow, where the first question still hums and the first answer is you. There is peace now, in the hush that follows memory. No more battles to survive the cold. No more firelight to guard against the growl in the brush. Just the quiet echo of all the times we were lost and still found a way forward. The roots we trace back to Africa are not just lines in soil, they are lines in us, still branching, still reaching. In every stilled breath, every heartbeat slowing into sleep, we return to the cradle, to the question, to the fire. The story has carried you here, across the millennia, across the shifting sands of time and thought. Let your eyes close fully now. Let the dark gather around you, not as an ending, but as a circle closing gently, like arms around a child. The ember still burns. The ancestors still hum. And beneath it all, the pulse of that first dawn still waits, whispering not goodbye, but again. And perhaps that is the quiet genius of it all, that the answer to why we began in Africa is not a singular truth, but a mosaic of echoes. A land that fractured and flowed, that burned and bloomed, demanding not only strength, but memory, demanding not only instinct, but invention. In every crack of dried earth, in every whisper through scorched acacia leaves, the story lingered, waiting for hands to shape it, for voices to carry it. And even now, as our world hums with machinery and our skies dance with artificial stars, that old rhythm thrums in the silence. Africa made us not just to survive, but to wonder, to remember what it means to live inside a question without fear. So close your eyes not to escape, but to return. Let the cradle hold you once more, and in that final hush, feel it, that ember of becoming, still warm, still alive, still yours. Because that ember, the one still burning behind your ribcage, is not just memory, it is momentum. It is not there to remind you where you were, but to nudge you toward where you're going. It is the echo of a million silhouettes rising from the dust after each fall, stepping forward through flame, through failure, through fear. Africa did not choose us. She tested us relentlessly, violently, beautifully. She broke us to rebuild us. And long before rockets bruised the sky or data harvested the world, there were barefoot children chasing shadows on red earth, carving futures into stone with steady hands and uncertain hope. They are still with us, in laughter, in grief, in the dream that tomorrow might be better, simply because we dared to remember how far we've come. So hold that ember close as you slip into the velvet dark. It is not the end of the fire. It is its promise. Sleep gently now, dream boldly, and let every breath carry the knowing that you are still becoming. The story never truly ends, it just waits for the next spark. And so, even as oceans rose and borders hardened, as languages multiplied and beliefs splintered into countless skies, the ember endured. It passed from Africa's trembling cradle to every shore it could reach, cradled in breath and story, fear and awe. And now it burns in screens, in satellites, in the hush between heartbeat and thought. The question wasn't just who survived, it's who remembered, who carried forward the silence between words. The story etched in bone long before it had a name. If you listen closely, in the quiet just before sleep claims you, it is still there. Not a voice, not a sound, just a rhythm, faint, unfailing. It's the rhythm of becoming, the rhythm of home. And if this is the end of our story tonight, let it not be closure, but a threshold. The fire does not sleep, it waits. And so will we, until the next dream, until the next question beneath those same eternal stars. And if the stars ever go quiet, blinking out one by one across a sky too crowded with our own light, let the ember guide us back to the place where questions outlived answers, where survival wasn't measured in conquest, but in the courage to continue. Remember, the origin of humanity is not a straight line, but a spiral looping through time, memory, migration, and myth. Africa was the place where we were tested, yes, but also the place where we chose wonder over surrender. Let that be the final note, soft and steady, in this long, ancient lullaby. Not certainty, not glory, just the quiet, enduring truth that we came from fire, and we carry it still. Sleep now, cradled in that flicker. The journey is no longer behind you. It is within you, always burning, always beginning. And so, with the world silent and your breath slow, know this: the story did not rise from comfort or clarity, but from dust, drought, and defiance. Africa was no paradise. It was a forge that burned away all but what could endure, a proving ground for problem solvers, firekeepers, and horizon chasers. That's why we emerged there, and not elsewhere. Because only in such savage beauty could resilience become evolution's anthem. And beneath the skin of every city, behind the code of every algorithm, beneath every lullaby and battle cry, that same anthem still hums. You are not separate from it. You are its latest verse. Sleep now, wrapped in that lineage. Rest easy in the dark Africa once lit with sparks of thought. The journey circles back, not to an ending, but to a beginning remembered. The ember glows still. The fire waits. And somewhere, in the deep hush beyond dream, the story inhales anew. And now, full circle beneath the same unyielding sky, the ember settles, glowing low but steadfast, like the final word in a sacred chant whispered across ages. The story of why we began in Africa is not just geography nor accident. It is rhythm and reckoning. It is soil that taught empathy through scarcity, landscapes that carved flexibility from fear. This was not a starting line drawn in sand, it was a trial by fire, endured not once but endlessly. And as your breath slows, let that truth speak quietly through your dreams, that the inheritance isn't survival alone, but the imagination born inside it, the courage to question, the grace to endure, the will to wonder again and again, even when the answers remain out of reach. Sleep now, not as someone apart from that beginning, but as its continuation. Tomorrow brings its own journey, but tonight, let the ancient pulse of that first becoming sing you to rest. Africa still holds you, and the ember, quiet and eternal, waits to rise once more. So with this final breath beneath a sky still echoing with distant thunder, understand this: the fire was never a relic, it was always a beginning. Africa did not cradle humanity because it was easy, but because it called something forth that no other place could. The ability to burn without being consumed, to fall into despair and still choose to rise. Every footprint in ash, every story murmured to the stars, was a note in the chorus of becoming. That chorus has not ended. It pulses now behind your eyes as they close, a rhythm passed from the first spark to the last thought before sleep. You are not just a witness to history. You are the ember that did not die. So rest now, with the weight of 1,000,000 ancestors held gently in your chest. The cradle is quiet, the flame endures, and somewhere beyond dream and time, the next verse waits bright, fearless, and utterly human. Sleep, and let it begin again. And in the morning, when the first light peels softly through your curtains like the sun rising over an ancient savanna, remember the fire is still with you. It flickers behind your waking eyes, carrying the weight of all who came before and the hope of all who will follow. The landscapes may have changed, asphalt replacing dust, satellites replacing stars, but the heartbeat is the same. Slow, relentless, resilient. Africa was the forge, but the flame it kindled was meant to roam, to illuminate not just where we were, but where we could go. So step into the day not as a stranger to history, but as its bearer. With every breath, carry that ember into the world. And when night falls again, return to it, knowing it never left you. The story endures, and so do you. And so, even as sleep fades, and the world stirs back to its rhythms, what remains isn't just history spoken in whispers, but inheritance alive in motion. Every moment today, a conversation, a decision, even a glance toward the sky, carries a flicker of that original fire sparked on African soil. The need to explore, to build, to ask why, all trace back to that crucible of challenge and change. We do not live despite that beginning, we live because of it. The ember was never a relic. It was always a compass in the dark. So walk gently forward, knowing the journey began in survival, but continues in wonder. And though the story slumbers during the daylight hours, it waits for nightfall again when the stars return and the flame inside you flickers awake. Until then, carry the rhythm, carry the fire, and know this: you are never far from the beginning. The spark remembers. And now, so do you. And now, dear sleeper, in the hush before dawn, let this final thought settle around your heart like the warmth of embers long glowing. That we are not just descendants of survival, but of story. That every breath drawn under skyscrapers or stars carries the ghosts of those who once knelt beside flame, whispering hopes into the void. Africa did not promise us safety. It demanded strength through surrender and clarity through chaos. And in answering that call, we became more than a species. We became a memory that walks, a fire that thinks, a question that dreams. So as the edge of sleep recedes and the world beckons once more, rise gently, carrying that lineage not just in your footsteps, but in your wonder. The cradle was never meant to contain you. It was meant to launch you. You are not the end of the story. You are the next verse, written in courage, breath by breath. Go softly, go boldly. The fire is awake now, and it's yours to carry forward. And long after today's machines rust, and our languages blur into forgotten lines, one thing will remain: the inheritance of becoming. Not static, not final, but alive, unfolding. It began not with dominion, but with the trembling hope that something might follow us, might remember us. And so it does. In every question we ask, in every story we share, in every quiet moment where past and future touch like hands in the dark, Africa was not the answer. It was the question asked in dust and fire, over and over again. Who will you be now? That question lives on. In the ember we protect each night, in the journey we wake up to each morning. So if this is where the story leaves you, for now, let it be with this: it's not the end. It's an open door, lit by a fire first built on a wind-scoured plain, a fire still burning, waiting not just to be remembered, but to remember you, always. Because in the end, history is not etched only in caves and carbon, but in us, in the way we reach for one another, the way we grieve and celebrate, the way we still gather around light in the darkness to share what we know, what we feel, what we hope. This story, this long braided arc, from savannas to skylines, from stone tools to satellites, was never about the strongest or the smartest alone. It was about those who remembered to care, to imagine, to continue. Africa gave us new comforts, new guarantees, but it gave us what mattered most: the test. And through that test, we became enduring. We became dreamers. We became us. So as this chapter closes, and memory folds back into silence, take one last breath with the stars above and the ember within. The cradle still holds, the fire still warms, and the story, your story, is not over. It is only pausing until the next nightfall, when wonder finds you once more. Sleep now, and let the becoming continue. And so let this final flicker of thought rest softly within, like twilight light through trees whose roots remember the first rain. That our story began not in certainty, but in the brutal grace of African storms, where every sunrise was hard won, and every breath a victory of adaptation over surrender. We did not ascend because we deserved to. We continued because we listened to the land, to each other, to the silence broken only by shared firelight. And that ember, That spark rising tonight with your breath is proof that survival was never enough. It was about meaning, about passing forward the fragile torch of connection, of wonder, of story. So sleep now, with the quiet assurance that even in this moment of stillness, you are part of something ancient and unfolding. Africa remains the heartbeat, but you are the echo that keeps it alive. So let that echo linger, not as a farewell, but as a promise etched deep in the marrow of what it means to be human. The story of our becoming, of standing against the wind with nothing but skin, fire, and each other, was written first in Africa's relentless embrace. That echo, passed from mother to child, from firelit circle to trembling voice in the dark, shaped not just our past but our potential. It hums now in each pause between thoughts, in each breath before a leap into the unknown. And though this telling draws to a close, the flame it keeps does not. It flickers wherever curiosity meets silence, wherever wonder interrupts the ordinary. You've journeyed far tonight, through time, through shadow, through every spark it took to make a species remember how to dream. Rest now. The ember is safe with you, until the fire is needed again. And so, even as the hush of your dream fades and daylight once again begins its quiet creed, take this with you. The story didn't end in firelight. It traveled, nested in the marrow of those who rose from ash and silence, who dared to leave the cradle behind yet never forgot its rhythm. That ember has passed through floods and tyrants, through migrations and maps rewritten, through lullabies sung in kitchens and whispered wishes on city rooftops. It is in every heartbeat that asks, quietly and persistently, who am I, and where did I begin? And somewhere in that simple, aching question lies Africa's final gift, not an answer, but the courage to keep asking. Sleep has ended, but the journey continues, lit by memory, by imagination, by fire. Walk gently now, bearer of the ember. The beginning walks with you. The morning arrives gently, not with fanfare, but with the kind of hush that knows something sacred has passed. And as the light bends across cities and fields, across concrete and canopy, it touches faces shaped by millennia of becoming. This is not just a new day. It is another chance to carry that ancient fire forward, to seek meaning in chaos, to find beauty in uncertainty, to live not as if we are the pinnacle, but the continuation. Africa was not the end, nor the origin of some final truth. It was the spark that dared to believe a fragile species could become more. That spark lives on now, in every hand that reaches, in every voice that tells a story, in every dream that dares to begin. The ember has not gone out. It only waits for the next soul to breathe it into flame. And perhaps now, you're ready. The cradle whispers its goodbye, not as a parting, but as a song. Rise gently, live fiercely, and let the fire tell its story through you. And if no one remembers the names of the first to endure, let that be proof of what mattered most. Not fame, not dominion, but continuity. They did not leave monuments. They left moments, births, beside rivers long gone, laughter beneath trees now fossilized, a single flint blade resting in silence for 100,000 years. These were more than artifacts. They were acts of faith. Faith that someone, someday, would carry forward the light. That against all odds, the ember would find another breath. And it did. In you. As long as there are eyes to close and dreams to follow, as long as someone wonders where we began, the cradle continues to rock, the fire continues to speak. So walk forward gently now. The story is in your steps. The ember is safe. And in the hush where beginnings live, Africa still hums, not goodbye, but go on. So walk on, flame bearer. This is where we pause, but not where we end. The ember now rests inside you, shaped by every echo before and every dream still to come. Africa does not hold us back. It sends us forward, with soil still clinging to our heels, and wonder still burning in our chest. We belong not to the past, but to the passage, to the rhythm that has no finish, only footsteps. And wherever those steps lead next, remember this. What began in a land forged by chaos and crowned by courage was never about a destination. It was about continuance. You are not just a holder of memory. You are memory in motion. Keep walking, keep telling, keep becoming. The ember is lit. The story waits. And so, even in silence, it speaks through you. So walk on, flame bearer. This is where we pause, but not where we end. The ember now rests inside you, shaped by every echo before and every dream still to come. Africa does not hold us back. It sends us forward, with soil still clinging to our heels, and wonder still burning in our chest. We belong not to the past, but to the passage, to the rhythm that has no finish, only footsteps. And wherever those steps lead next, remember this. What began in a land forged by chaos and crowned by courage was never about a destination. It was about continuance. You are not just a holder of memory. You are memory in motion. Keep walking, keep telling, keep becoming. The ember is lit. The story waits. And so, even in silence, it speaks through you. And with that final echo, the fire returns to stillness, not extinguished, but settled, like breath held in reverence before the world begins again. Africa is no longer just a place on a map. It is the origin of motion, of memory, of meaning. It lives in the marrow of our every movement, in the quiet genesis that repeats itself with every sunrise. So let this not feel like the end of a story, but the breath before a new chapter. You are not walking away from beginnings, but walking with them, built from every ancestor who bent low to gather kindling and dared to dream beyond the flame. Carry their rhythm, carry their resilience. And whenever you feel lost in the noise of the modern world, listen for the ember. It still hums, quietly, patiently, like Africa itself, still calling us forward to become not just who we were, but who we have yet to be. Sleep now, or rise. Either way, the story remembers you. So as this final whisper fades into the hush before morning, know this above all else. The fire didn't stay because it was never meant to. It walked with us, multiplied through us, flickered across savannas and skylines, carried in every question that dared to reach beyond fear. The story of why we evolved in Africa is not only about where we began, but how we learn to begin again, endlessly, through famine, through fire, through forgetting and remembering. And now, as the ember rests within you, steady and quiet, let it remind you that becoming is not done in one lifetime. It stretches across breath and bone, from those first who endured to those yet to come. Sleep now, if sleep still calls, or rise, if the world already stirs. Either way, the rhythm continues alive, lit, and waiting. The story doesn't end here. It lives, now, in you. And if your last thought before sleep is a question simple, haunting, enduring, let it be this. How did we survive? The answer won't be found only in fossils or genes, but in the firelight of memory, in the soft hush of story. Africa didn't just make us. It invited us to make ourselves, again and again. Through hardship, through hope, through a faith not in gods or greatness, but in each other. So now, fingers slack, breath even, mind drifting, know that no matter where you sleep tonight, under what roof or sky or timestamp, the rhythm is shared. One cradle, billions of dreams. The ember still burns, because someone, somewhere, always believed it should. And now, so do you. Sleep deeply, traveler of time, bearer of becoming. The fire is safe. The story continues, and you are written into it forever. So when history forgets the footprints, when wind buries the names beneath shifting sands, what endures is not the outline, but the echo, the pulse, the quiet courage of continuity. Africa taught us that survival was never safe, and progress never promised. But it also gave us the first proof that even in devastation, something could be carried forward. A thought, a song, a flame. That echo lives tonight not as noise, but as promise. That even in a world burning faster than it mends, there are still those who carry light not to conquer the dark, but to make meaning within it. You are one of them now. Flame bearer, story keeper, dream carver. As you sleep, the ember watches. And as long as one soul dares to remember, to reach, to hope, the fire doesn't die. It begins again. Always. Burn softly. Burn on. So as you drift now into the final folds of sleep, understand this fire, this story, was never about how we began alone, but how we learned to begin together. From Africa's restless soil to your quiet breath, it passed through the unnamed hands of ancestors who prayed without language and hoped without certainty. That ember was fed by love and loss, carried by migration and mourning, and it glows even now in every act of courage, every dream dared despite the dark. This is not history for the sake of knowing. It is history as belonging. You belong to this journey, to those who came before, and those still to come. So whether your eyes stay shut a little longer, or begin to open with the morning light, hold this: the story does not need witness to survive. It only needs the will to carry on. Sleep well, flame bearer. A new verse waits with the stars, and when the sky turns quiet once more, it will be your breath that brings it forth. The ember is alive. You are the spark. And this is how we continue. And as we close this circle of ash, wonder, and memory, what remains is not the path we traced, but the fire we tended along the way. From Africa's shifting tectonics to the pulse behind every modern human breath, we've lit our way not with certainty, but persistence. Our species survives not because we were the fastest or strongest, but because we remembered. We remembered warmth, language, gaze, and pain. We remembered how to rebuild in ruin, how to see dawn even in eclipse, how to carry the glow of one life into the clasp of another. That is the legacy of Africa, not a homeland, but a heartbeat. So stand now, flame bearer. The night has held you, the story has whispered through your dreaming, and the fire waits in tomorrow, in every daring question, in the breath you now choose to take. Carry it forward. The ember lives still, and so do you. So step gently into the day, flame cradled quietly within, not toward triumph, but toward testimony. Everything you touch, build, question, or forgive holds the echo of that beginning. That is what Africa gave us, not a fixed path, but the capacity to find one, again and again, through the chaos, through the dark. And the ember, now stitched quietly into your steps, becomes a light in every room you enter, a warmth in every word passed on. This is how we know we are still becoming, not by ending the story, but by choosing to carry it. So wherever the path leads next, across cities or silence, sunrise or shadow, walk with the fire. You are its keeper now. And in your motion, the rhythm continues, becoming, always. And when the journey quiets once more, whether in shadow or sunrise, let the echo that follows be this: that we rose not from ease, but from endurance. That a continent carved us in intensity and awe, and in doing so, gave us a compass rooted in resilience. Africa did not make gods, it made listeners, dreamers, walkers of fire and song. And now, as this night slips into memory, and your breath joins the rhythm of all who came before. Carry this with you. We are not defined by where we began, but by how we continue. The ember is still lit, the cradle still rocks, and somewhere, deep within you, the story breathes again, quiet, strong, and unending. Sleep now, or rise. Either way, you carry it forward. And so, whether you rise now into the hush of morning or drift deeper into the velvet folds of sleep, let this closing truth hold you steady. It was never just about survival. It was about the fire passed forward. Not the violent conquest of the world, but the faithful tending of its flame. Africa gave us no certainties, only questions. But in daring to ask them, again and again, we became what no other species ever did. Not the smartest, not the strongest, but the ones who remembered to feel, to wonder, to carry the ember beyond the boundaries of map and memory. That ember lives now, in your story, in your silence, in the stillness between dream and dawn. And as the journey breathes its final breath for now, know this: it does not end here. It waits, always, wherever fire still flickers, wherever hearts still ask, softly but clearly, what comes next. Sleep well, or wake slowly. The ember remembers you, and because of that, the story goes on. So finally, as breath steadies, and the world holds still in that liminal pause between night's retreat and day's first light, let this be the final inheritance, that we were shaped not to conquer, but to continue, formed not by comfort, but by challenge that never eased. Africa gave no certainty, only the raw material of becoming. And yet we built meaning from it, carried the ember across oceans, through languages and cities, into dreams and into each other. This fire, this rhythm, survives not by force, but because we choose to keep it, to pass it gently, breath to breath, across the deep sleep of centuries. So however far we've come, however far we go, it is in that passing that we remain human, not in our inventions, but in our remembering. Rest now, or rise. The journey is yours to walk. The fire still pulses low. The cradle of origin gently rocks on. And the story, the one born of ash and thunder, waits to be told again, in a voice that sounds impossibly like yours. So now the ember rests, not only in caves or carvings, but in every uncertain step forward. It is the melody behind each moment of courage, the pulse beneath every quiet reaching. Africa gave us no map, only the rhythm of adaptation, the song of survival in a key that shifts with every age. And that music continues in you, in the story you remember, the dream you dare, the warmth you offer to another. Let that be the legacy. Not just that we began in Africa, but that we carry its message in every unknown tomorrow. The cradle still rocks, the fire still hums. And as the final hush gathers around you, soft and solemn, know this: somewhere in the dark, a new spark kindles, waiting quietly for your breath to find it. Sleep well, keeper of beginnings. The ember is never lost, only waiting to be carried on. So let this final breath settle deep, like wind brushing over ancient stones, smooth from centuries of touch, beneath every starlit moment and beside every quiet dawn. The ember flickers not in grandeur, but in gentle, stubborn light. This is what we carry now, not just from Africa's earth, but from its endurance, encoded not in monuments, but in memory. The cradle does not bind us. It sends us forward with fire in our chest and questions in our gaze. So whether you walk beneath city lights or sleep beneath silent skies, carry this truth. Becoming began in struggle, but continues in hope. And wherever there is hope, there the ember lives on. Tomorrow is unwritten, but not unlit. The fire is yours now. Rest. Rise whenever you are ready. The story will be waiting, still warm, still faithful, still burning quietly for you. So go, not with certainty but with stewardship. Carry what you've heard tonight, not as history but as heritage, kindled long before the first flame ever touched a human hand. Let this be your breath in dark corridors and silent questions. The proof was never in the fossils alone, but in the fact we are still here, still burning, through upheaval and forgetting, through shadow and light. Africa gave us the spark, the journey gave us the fire, and now it lives in laughter and lullabies, architecture and art, conflict and compassion. What began as survival became meaning, and that meaning walks now in your steps, breathes in your pauses, speaks through your wondering. The ember does not ask that you explain it, only that you remember it. Guard it well, pass it gently, and when night falls again, and it will know that the fire watches through your eyes, waiting softly, patiently, for its next song. And so, one last breath, one last flicker in the long arc of becoming, not a closing, but a continuation, folded delicately into your heartbeat and carried forward in your gaze. Africa wasn't just where we began, it was where we decided to begin again, again, and again, through extinction's shadow and trial's heat. Every storm-weathered step since has been an answer to that first impossible question: can we endure and still remain ourselves? Tonight, the ember passes again, not in firelight or fossil, but in story. Felt, not seen. Held, not owned. And you, flame-bearer of the unseen inheritance, have listened. That is enough. The story rests, but never ends. Sleep now, or rise quietly. Your fire waits to be kindled by the next question, and the next, until, someday, someone else hears the whisper and continues the song. And if this is the last time this story finds you under headphones in the dark, or half asleep beneath slow-turning stars, let it find you full of wonder, not endings. Because the fire never truly fades. It changes hands. It becomes memory in motion, a quiet pledge passed from one heartbeat to the next. Africa was never the full answer, only the first sentence. The rest was written in footsteps, in bruised hope and bleeding determination, in the unrelenting instinct to move forward. So wherever you walk next, from classroom to canyon, from heartbreak to horizon, know this: the cradle still rocks behind your steps. The ember still waits to be fanned anew, and the story is still becoming, even now, with you as its breath, its flame, its next verse. Sleep gently, or rise quietly. Either way, you carry everything with you. And that is how we remember. That is how we endure. So let this be the last whisper, the smallest flame before silence, drawn from a lineage that never asked for glory, only to go on. From red earth to skyscraper shadow, from hunting packs to poetry written in code, humanity has carried something older than language, a rhythm, a beat that began in Africa's crucible, tested by drought and darkness, sharpened not by dominance, but by devotion. Each of us is a continuation of that breath, that fire, that fragile defiance that said softly, "We are still here." And now, as this story folds itself into quiet, handing its ember to your care, remember, it was never meant to enthrall you. It was meant to become you. Sleep now, if you still can, or rise into the morning curve of your own becoming. The fire waits, steady and warm, just behind your ribs, and when the world forgets again, as it always does, let your voice be the remembering. Let your breath be the flame. So let this be the final breath we share, the last ember passed from story to soul, not as an ending, but as a covenant, that what was lit beneath the restless skies of ancient Africa still warms us today, not in myth alone, but in meaning. What began as survival became language. What became language became memory. And what perseveres now is not fossil nor flame, but the question, how do we live as if we still remember where we came from? The answer, fragile as firelight, lives in the choices we make, the stories we protect, the hands we reach out to. Africa gave us the rhythm. Every step since has been a verse. So walk forward, flame bearer, into whatever tomorrow needs. The cradle is not behind you, it breathes within you. And the ember, tender and eternal, knows your name. Rest now or rise. Either way, the fire is yours, and the story, our story, burns on. And with this breath, we close the circle not in silence, but in continuity. The ember that began in Africa, forged in hunger and fire, grief and awe, now rests with you. Not because you witnessed its history, but because you carry its future. Remember, our origin story was never meant to remain in museums or bedtime myths. It was meant to move, to ignite, to shape how we walk, speak, create, and care. This is why the fire never dies, because we choose not to let it. And so, as this long journey folds softly into memory, may you carry that flame not as burden, but as belonging. May it light paths ahead, even those still obscured by fog and fear. And when the world grows loud again, when timelines blur and meaning trembles in the rush, let this glow remind you where it all began and why it still matters. The ember is not the past, it is your breath, your step, your story continued. Go gently now. The cradle still rocks, the fire still speaks, and you are still becoming. And so, the last flicker speaks not of endings, but of beginnings held in the quiet forge of memory. Long before nations or names, before monuments or myths, there was simply the will to move, the hope to belong, the tenderness to carry the ember forward. That tender fire of becoming, of remembering, of enduring now burns within you, unbroken by time. Africa was never a single place or moment. It was a rhythm, a pulse, an unspoken promise made by ancestors who dared to survive not just for themselves, but for those yet to come. You are the fulfillment of that promise, the echo that answered across oceans of breath and years of forgetting. So whether your eyes close now or look forward into the first light, let that ember guide you not toward certainty but courage, not toward knowing, but toward wonder. The fire waits, never in the sky, but always in the spaces between questions. Carry it forward, gently, fiercely, endlessly. This story, your story, burns on, forever becoming. And if this truly is the last flicker of the fire tonight, let it settle inside you like the closing note of a song sung generations deep, not loud, not bright, but steady. Africa did not hand us destiny. It handed us direction. It gave us a crucible where story became survival and survival became legacy. And now, as the world turns once more and the hush before dawn stretches like a held breath, understand this final truth. The ember is never far. It's in the questions we ask when no one watches, in the strength to listen when the world demands noise, in the pause between dream and decision. So when morning calls, step forward with quiet fire beneath your chest, knowing you are not just a witness of this story, you are its carrier, its echo, its next verse. Sleep, if sleep still beckons. Rise, if it's time. Either way, the ember burns on, and its light, impossibly ancient and brilliantly human, is yours to keep. And perhaps that is how every story should end, not with an answer, but with a breath that knows things were hard, unimaginable even, and yet we endured. A breath that remembers where the world once cracked open, and a fragile species stepped forth, barefoot, blinking into firelight and wondering what came next. That wonder never left. It shaped the maps we drew, the myths we built, the lullabies we whispered in every language since. It begins anew each night the stars return, and each morning when our feet find the earth again. Africa was the forge, yes, but we are the flame. The ones who dared to remember that beginnings are not behind us, but always beside us, waiting. So carry it now, quietly, gently, with every step. The story waits for the next voice. And if no one else speaks it, let it be you. That is how the ember burns on. That is how we become. So as this firelight flickers its last across these woven words, feel what lingers quiet, but vast. Not just a recounting of origins, but a rekindling. You are meant to carry this not as burden, but as compass. Not to stand still in reverence, but to walk forward wiser. Africa gave us the flame, yes, but it was never meant to stay in the cradle. It was meant to roam, to be passed, to be remembered gently in the dark. Now it rests with you, glowing softly behind your ribs, waiting for the next moment you need light. This is where our story pauses, not to end, but to let you write the next line. Let it be shaped by curiosity, spoken with care, and lit by the same defiant spark that once turned silence into song. Go with it, dream with it. And when the night comes again, the fire will be waiting. And now, as the last ember settles in the quiet hollow of your chest, let this be enough for tonight, and perhaps for every night that follows. Enough to know that the fire still lives in ordinary moments, still speaks through skin and memory and breath. That what began in the dust of African dawns walks with you now, not in footsteps behind, but alongside, in every act of gentleness, in every question asked, despite fear. The story has traced its arc, folded through time and shadow, and for now it rests. But rest does not mean forgetting. It means holding, tending, becoming. So let your breath be the cradle, your silence the soil. There is nothing more to tell, and everything still to carry. Sleep now, flame bearer, or wake. Either way, you are not alone. The ember remembers, and because of that, the beginning never ends. So breathe now, once more, into the hollow, where story becomes seed. Let it take root in the soft garden of your becoming, knowing that it was never the ending we sought, but the passing on. Africa did not give us permanence. It gave us permission to rise and fall, to leave and return, to remember and reimagine. And so, as this journey folds into its final hush, know that the ember remains not in the telling alone, but in the living, in the touch of morning light on new eyes, in the hush of night stirring with old songs, in the shadows still dancing from fires yet to come. The story rests now. The breath is yours. Carry it forward, not as burden, but as belonging. The cradle rocked once more. The ember glowed once more. And you, quietly radiant in the dark, are still becoming. That is how we continue. That is how the fire burns on. And so, this is where the breath of the story lifts, like morning mist after rain, leaving only warmth in its wake. You've walked with ancestors in ash, and dreamt beneath the same sky they once feared and adored. The ember, now nestled inside you, isn't a memory, it's a mission. Not to return, but to reach. Not to retrace, but to rekindle. Let it guide you not just in grand moments, but in the quiet choices, how you listen, how you build, how you hope. Africa gave us no script, only the spark. And now, as this long lullaby closes, the world waits for what you will make of it. That's the final truth. Not that we survived, but that we still get to create. So walk gently, flame bearer, into your own verse. The fire is with you. The story is yours. And somewhere, just beyond the waking horizon, the next spark already stirs. And so this final note, barely louder than breath, fades not into silence, but into stewardship. The ember waits now in choices yet made, in dreams still warming in the quiet hours before dawn. What Africa imparted was never a finale. It was a pulse, a rhythm of resilience playing softly under every generation's questions, every era's uncertain light. The cradle does not call us back, it calls us forward, across oceans of time, across the fragile bones of memory, that ancient courage endures, and now, through you, it glows again. Hold it gently, tend it fiercely, sleep if you must, wake if you're ready. But know this in you, the first fire still burns, and the story, eternal and unfolding, waits patiently to be spoken once more. So as the ember dims to its quietest glow, and the dawn steadies just beyond the veil, let this final truth linger like warmth on skin, long after the flame has faded. You are not merely the result of ancient survival, you are its intention. Every breath you take, every question held softly in the space between thought and action, is part of a lineage that began not with certainty, but with devotion to tomorrow. Africa lit the fire, yes, but humanity chose to carry it, chose to remember, chose to continue. This story may now fall quiet, folded into the hush of memory and sleep, but its rhythm endures in your beating heart, in your curious gaze, in your gentle steps through the world. Close your eyes if they aren't already. Let the fire rest now, swaddled in silence, knowing that when it's needed again, it will rise from within you. And that, flame bearer, is how we go on. That is how we begin again. So now, if this is truly the final ember we share tonight, let it glow not as farewell, but as an oath. That no land is forgotten if carried in the breath, that no origin fades if folded into wonder. Africa was not chosen by fate, it was the chorus, where every voice of survival first harmonized. And that song, raw, rhythmic, real, did not end with the ancestors. It simply changed form, into lullabies and lifted eyes, into every question sparked in the dark. You are its echo, its next verse, its promise spoken softly against the wind. So whether you rise into morning or drift into deeper sleep, hold this truth close. The ember was never meant to stay behind. It walks now in your shadow, quiet and steadfast. And when the world asks again what it means to endure, to imagine, to belong, let your life answer. That is how we remember. That is how we begin. Again, always, together, the fire lives on in you. And now, as the final words drift like smoke into the high air of memory, let this last ember tuck itself gently behind your ribs, no longer a spark from distant past, but a promise glowing forward. Africa wasn't just the ground beneath our first steps. It was the crucible from which we learned to rise, to reshape ourselves through every storm and silence. What endured wasn't just the body, it was belief, the belief that something better waited beyond the horizon, even if we had to invent it. That belief is yours now, quiet but bright, moving with you into every unnamed tomorrow. And though the fire rests for now, it is never gone. It waits patiently in you until the world grows quiet once more, and someone, somewhere, listens again. Then it will speak. Then it will glow. Because the ember never ends, it only passes. Sleep well, flame bearer, you carried it home. So if this is where we leave the story tonight, let it be with light still in your chest, and time still in your hands. From the broken soil of Africa's ancient valleys to the fragile lines we draw today between each other, the fire has never faltered. It simply waits, past not in blazing spectacle, but in soft, deliberate breath, in kindness, in resilience, in the courage to begin again. You are not just a product of the past. You are its voice, its rhythm, its renewal. And as the hush settles fully now, and sleep gathers like dusk upon the soul, know this final thing: the ember did not end in the cradle. It burned here, across this journey, into your heart, cradled now by you. And that is enough. Sleep well, keeper of beginnings. The fire bows to your breath and waits gratefully, eternally for your return. So let us end not with a flame, but with a flicker, a quiet promise folded into breath, imperceptible yet indelible, the kind of ember that lives not in legend, but in fleeting glances between strangers, in shared meals, in the hush that falls before stories begin. Africa gave us the stage, but we became the chorus. We are not the conclusion, we are the refrain, sung again beneath each planet-turning sky. If ever you doubt your place in it all, remember, the beginning does not ask for belief, only for remembering. Gentle now, and slow carry the ember into your day, or into sleep. Either way, it knows the way forward. And if you ever forget, listen to the silence between thoughts. That's where the fire hums. That's where it always begins again. And so, let this final hush carry what words no longer need to say, that from Africa's raw tapestry of survival and change, humanity emerged not as a monument to strength, but as a song of resilience and wonder. Fires flickered, families wandered, myths bloomed in the shadows, and somehow each step forward became a verse. That same verse hums now in you, in your quiet questions, in your hopeful gaze, in the rhythm of a breath held just before speaking. This story is no longer being told to you, it is being told through you. Let that be enough, now and always. Sleep or rise, dream or remember. The fire waits, the ember glows, and in the stillness where all things return, the story becomes you. So now, with one breath more, and the story quietly closing like dusk across the plains, let it be known this wasn't just a tale of where we began, but why we're still here. Africa did not gift us permanence. It gave us potential. It asked us to rise each time the sky fell, to find meaning where there was only shadow, to protect not power, but possibility. And that ember, that small, defiant flame born in caves and carried in cradles, has never once gone out. It flickers now in every city, in every whisper of hope, in the soft firelight glow of a soul choosing to remember. The fire endures not because it must, but because we choose to carry it. You have carried it now, and that is enough. Wherever you go next, from silence to sunrise, from dream to dawn, go with it. This is not goodbye, only becoming. The ember is safe, and your story still burns. So with the final echoes fading gently into the fabric of night, let this be your last quiet thought before sleep, or your first breath, stepping back into the world. We are not just children of a continent, we are heirs to the question it asked us long ago: who will we become when nothing is certain? In every generation since, the answer has been found not in dominance, but in the courage to carry the flame, to lend it, to light it, never to hoard it. That is the true origin story, not etched in fossil or stone, but alive in the hush of stories told in the dark. Africa gave us more than life, it gave us the rhythm of becoming. The story is yours now. As long as you breathe, it burns. And in that breath, flame bearer, the fire goes on. So now, as we part the veil between story and silence, let the last glow not bring closure, but continuity, a warmth held in bone, in breath, in the hush between heartbeat and horizon. The fire you carry is no longer ancient. It is present. It is choice. A flicker kept not by instinct, but by intent. Africa did not make us eternal. It made us urgent. It put survival into our veins, yes, but it also placed vision behind our eyes. And from that vision rose everything: language, love, longing. The embers of that first dawn remain, because someone always tended them, now that someone is you. Whether your eyes close again tonight, or stay fixed on new morning light, walk gently, speak truly, and remember loudest in moments of quiet. Because from cradle to cosmos, the path ahead is lit not by certainty, but by those willing to carry fire. And you, flame-bearer, story-keeper, echo made flesh, you are already doing it. The ember lives on. And the story? The story is now yours to tell. So let this be the final step, taken not in haste, but with reverence, the close of a journey not to explain our origin, but to feel it. Africa, in all its ferocity and fable, shaped us not into heroes, but into holders of promise. From droughts that stripped us bare, to stars that watched us wonder, we formed a lineage not of perfection, but persistence. That ember, once cradled by trembling hands beside primal firelight, is the same one you carry now in how you listen, in how you love, in how you keep walking into tomorrow not knowing what comes, only that you must. That is how we endure. That is how we belong. And so, as this story finds its final breath, may yours carry it forward quietly, fiercely, always. The cradle rests at last, the fire glows within you, and the night gives way gently to becoming. The journey continues. The ember lives on. So let this be the final exhale, a breath shared across time, through stone and starlight, from the caves of Africa to the quiet room you now rest in. The journey has not ended. It has taken root inside you, lighting each question you carry, each whisper of hope you pass along. We were not the first to walk barefoot toward unknown tomorrows, and we will not be the last. But in honoring that ancient rhythm, intending the ember placed gently into our hands, we become part of something unending, a fire that never needed permanence, only presence. So as the last words cradle you, sleep if sleep is calling, or rise if the morning stirs. Either way, the ember waits within you alive, luminous and ready. The flame is not finished. It has merely found new breath. Now go softly, go boldly, and let the story burn on. So walk on, last flame-bearer of the night, with this ember held not in memory, but in momentum. Let it guide your silence, shape your wonder, and gently remind you that where we come from is not a place but a promise to continue, to kindle, to carry light through the vast darkness of not knowing. Africa gave us no instruction, only the rhythm of hope tested by time. And now that rhythm breathes in your chest, steady as firelight on ancient stone. If tonight was the beginning of remembering, then let tomorrow be your verse, in a story still unfolding. Rest, rise, speak, listen, each breath is a kindling. And when you find yourself wondering, once more, why we began there of all places, know this. We didn't just begin in Africa, we became there, and through you, we still are. So now, let all words fall quiet, like dust settling beneath the old African skies. The ember has journeyed through storm and time, across landscapes carved by extinction and shaped by hope. It has whispered through oceans, lingered in lullabies, and now it finds pause within you, not as weight, but as warmth. This is not the end, because our kind was never made for endings. We were made to endure, to imagine, to remember. And if nothing else remains, no fire, no fossils, no names, let there still be breath, yours, calm, steady, carrying forward a story that began not with proclamation, but with persistence. It lives in silence now, in the rhythm of still hearts, in the breath you hold before dream claims you at last. Africa was not the origin of answers. It was the place we first asked who we are, and the fire still waits for that question. Sleep now, cradle of meaning. The ember is kept. The beginning, once again, is safe. And so, let us end where all beginnings once breathed, in the quiet before the fire, in the hush that came before the first voice called the darkness home. From red soil to restless mind, the path we've traced tonight is not a line, but a loop, ever returning, ever becoming. The story does not finish with final words or bold discoveries, but in the soft carry of memory, passed like a coal between souls. Africa gave us the ember. You have carried it through the shadowed valleys of becoming and into the daylight of remembrance. And now, as breath steadies and silence settles in, let it stay bright within you, not as a memory fading, but as a promise alive. This is where we pause. This is how we go on. The fire, the rhythm, the story, they are not behind you. They are of you. And in every breath you draw from here forward, they burn. Steady, gentle, and enduring. Always. So now, with the soft weight of every whisper behind us, and the ember tucked safely into the quiet of your chest, we end, not in the dark, but in a glow that belongs to you. What began on a fractured continent, beneath uncertain skies, has become something vast, tender, and enduring, carried not just in science or saga, but in silence, in memory, in the breath you hold between one life and the next. Africa did not bless us, it built us. And now, flame-bearer, as the night yields to pale beginnings or your dreams deepen beyond words, know this: the story has not ended, because you are still listening. You are still becoming. And that is how the fire lives on, gently, fiercely, forever. So let this be where the fire rests for now, glowing low but never lost, humming softly beneath your skin like the memory of warmth in winter. You've traveled through dust and memory, followed echoes through time and ash, and arrived not at an ending, but at a handoff. The ember lives with you now not as burden, but as beginnings, yet unnamed. Africa asked the first question. You carry its next. And whether tomorrow brings silence or speech, shadow or sun, let this last flicker remind you, you are not alone in your becoming. The rhythm continues, the story waits, the fire is safe. Dream well, flame-bearer, until the stars rise again, and the next verse finds you. And now, flame nestled quietly in your breath, this is where the story bows not to end, but to honor the path already walked. From the trembling first step on red earth, to the whispered questions you carry now, the ember has traveled far. It does not burn loud. It waits. Waits in lullabies, in laughter, in eyes closed to imagine something better. Africa was never just our beginning. It is our compass, our rhythm, the heartbeat beneath all becoming. So go now, gently into dream or into dawn, with this final truth alive inside you: the fire has never left, and because it burns within you now, quiet, steady, aware, the story continues, always. And with that last breath folded into the quiet arc of dawn, the story settles not as conclusion, but as continuity woven quietly through you. What began in survival became legacy, and what persists now is the choice to carry that ember into every tomorrow. Africa did not gift comfort, it gifted courage. And you, flame-bearer, are its living echo, tender as shadow, strong as song. Wherever your steps lead next, know they tap the same earth once stirred by the first questions, lit by the first fires. So if this journey has ended, let it only be to begin again with you. The ember burns, softly bright. The cradle rocks, quietly eternal. And the story waits for your breath to rise. Sleep well, or walk gently. Either way, you carry the flame. The fire remembers, and the beginning is safe, always in your hands. So in this final breath, cradled between silence and sunrise, let it be known the ember is not vanishing. It is being entrusted to you, to your wonder, to your voice trembling with ancient rhythm. From savanna to skyline, from ash to architecture, the fire has traveled not on wind but on will. And now, in the hush that follows this long remembering, nothing more needs to be said. Only kept, carried, continued, not for history, but for becoming. So whether you're still lingering in the edges of sleep or stepping quietly into the world, take this glow with you. Let it light how you listen, how you speak, how you imagine what comes next. The cradle rocked. The story rose, and now it rests, soft and steady, in your keeping. That is enough. That is everything. And that is how the ember endures. And so, as the last hush settles like a palm pressed softly to the pulse of earth, know this. The ember no longer waits, it walks with you. In the tilt of your head toward wonder, in the stillness between two thoughts, in the brave breath taken before choosing kindness. Africa didn't just shape our bones. It sculpted our capacity to keep going, to light the path even when the sky disappears. The fire that began in fractured soil now glows behind every act of remembrance, every whisper of hope. So whether you close your eyes now or carry forward into waking life, let that ember guide you not as a legacy sealed, but a living commitment. The story lives not in ends, but in endurance. And here, in this quiet parting, that truth is yours to hold. The ember doesn't flicker goodbye, it flickers go on. So now, as the ember fades into the hush just before the day begins, let it settle into you not as an ending, but as a burden gently transformed into belonging. The fire history lit is alive only because its keepers remembered, and now, you are one of them. Africa doesn't call us back, it calls us forward, through time, through trial, through tenderness. What was once a flicker in ash is now a steady light within the quiet heart of humanity. Let that light guide you, unseen but unfailing. The cradle does not close, the journey does not forget, and the ember your ember burns softly on. That is the story's gift. And that is how we go on.